The society we live in has a lot of opinions about how people should look.
All the opinions.
All the opinions, and all that shit is internalized. Series of things you can buy into. Your Jenny Craig's, your Weight Watchers, Slim Fast. That whole industry has actually been turned on its head because of these injectables. This shot can solve the problem.
Would you mind telling me whose brain I did put in? And you will be angry. I will not be angry. Abby someone. Abby someone. Abby who? Abby normal.
This is the Abby Normal Podcast, here to tell you that you're weird and that's normal.
I'm not a thin person. I'm a stocky person. And so I always had to watch what I eat or I would gain weight. But it wasn't, this was like, no matter what I did, I would just keep gaining weight.
My friend Maureen doesn't ever carry a purse. She prides herself on pockets. Yet she's here today to unzip her body baggage. There's some stuff deep down in there, and there's some stuff folded fresh on the top that she doesn't mind too much sharing. And though it's an exercise in frustration, she also has a lot of knowledge about the systems that keep us separated from our natural food sources.
It's just because our food systems are so fucked up, and then our attitude towards food and how we should look are so fucked up.
Correct.
So that's why this is such a nightmare for everyone.
Right. We're going to get into the complexity that hides beneath all the flippant assumptions made about how a body appears and what's happening on the inside. But even though Maureen is here to talk about this topic, no one likes to be reduced to the health history of their body. So, while she was serving up homemade cake at a party, I asked her to share who she is.
For my job, I'm a book designer. When I'm not book designing, I like to make books. I like to make artist stamps. I like to make feminist statements in my art. I like to send and receive mail, like mail art. What else do I do? I like to travel the world, cook dinners for friends. I like to go to the farmer's market. Yeah, music is important too. I love chickens. I love keeping hens. And I love cats. And I have a great cat named Scylla. And a very nice partner in life named Cody.
You make friggin' cheesecake for
I
your
bake.
bestie.
I do bake. I like to bake a lot.
I'm sorry that we're not talking about all of that interesting stuff that makes up Maureen. Instead, we're starting at perhaps the bottom of that bag, where Maureen got the first messages that her stocky body may be the wrong kind. We're not born with this, right? So do you remember a moment where things like switched for you, kind of where you got an idea of what your body should look like, or that one type of body is better than another body?
I have 3 very distinct memories. I knew that I was considered chubby, but I didn't really care. In early elementary school, nobody said anything. I wasn't teased. And through 5th grade, that remained true. You know, like I knew I was a bigger bone, chubby girl, but I didn't feel self-conscious, that kind of thing. And then a couple things, and I think probably puberty was part of it. Kids started teasing me for my weight. And it culminated at the school I was at called All Saints in 7th grade. But leading up to that culmination, which I'll tell you about, which was incredibly cruel in a minute, I would come home and I would be really upset. My mom would pick me up. And I don't want to blame my mom. My mom's a dietitian. She's a certified diabetes educator. She has a master's in public health. She's worked really hard to make a lot of people's lives better. But she also has internalized all this stuff despite her training. But I'd come home and she'd pick me up from school and I'd be crying. And she would tell me things like, don't wear your heart on your sleeve. Rather than you're fine the way you are, either don't let them get to you, and show, even if they do get to you, don't let it show. And then a number of times saying, well, maybe you could stand to lose a few pounds. This is from my mom. And at the time, she's my mom. I'm in elementary school. Yeah. That's what I think needs to happen.
Sure.
And it wasn't until later that I realized how messed up that was.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of hearing you're beautiful the way you are, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah.
Maybe coming up with some methods for turning the bullying around, that kind of thing. But in 7th grade, it was very small because it was the first year. I think there was only 7 or 8 of us. All my other friends had left and gone on to middle schools elsewhere. And I had only one friend left. Her name was Brooke Billups. She was a ballet dancer. She was super cool. We decided to figure out how to be more mod together and went and bought trench coats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Cut off our hair and got tails. And Brooke and I were tight. We were great. Then she went out with mono for many months.
Oh, no.
And it was just me and a bunch of cool kids.
Oh.
They decided to form things like the Cat Club and not include me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I really was just sat and read at lunch because nobody would talk to me because there were only like 6 people left. But it finally culminated towards the end of the school year where I came into school one day before the teacher came in. And the boys, there was this one guy named Darren. He was such a little turd. Had decided that they were going to, while we were waiting for the teacher to get there, I don't know why he was late that day, to start marching around my desk in circles, saying the names of foods, like donuts, cookies, like fattening foods.
My God.
I went home. It sent me into a tailspin and I was a mess because it was just cruel. I remember the teacher getting really mad at them and then taking me down to the office to have my mom come get me because I wasn't going to get any learning done that day.
Oh my God.
I don't actually remember what she said to me that day, but I do know the next year I was at a different school. And this was towards the school year, end of the school year, with really nice kids, really nice girls. That's
horrible.
That was horrible. And that
horrible
was definitely ingrained.
Yep. That was only one of the scenarios that got stuck in Maureen's brain growing up. Those little a-holes marching around her desk, and the message from her mom, verbally to put on a strong facade, and the subconscious message, yes, something is wrong with you. Learn how to deal. I'm sure most of us have those memories, things kids or our parents said that burrowed into our psyches. Now, Maureen's mom is a dietitian, which makes this all a bit more complicated and sensitive. So I asked Maureen what, if anything, she learned from her mom in relation to her expertise.
I will say, food-wise, my freshman year in college, I did gain weight, as one does.
Correct. When freshman 15.
When you're let loose in the commons.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And I was able to lose that weight following summer with her help because I didn't have a problem with physics at that point. Mm-hmm. Whereas I basically cut calories and danced and the weight came off. And she was super supportive in that because that's how she knew how to help people. And so that I was really grateful for.
She followed her mom's advice and things normalized for a few years.
In my late 20s, my hormones started going a little wacky. I started losing hair. I started getting hair where I did not want. So I lost head hair, but then I started getting chin hair and breast hair.
Fun
in my late 20s. And I started gaining weight uncontrollably, no matter what I did. So initially that diagnosis was an adrenal gland thing, which was fixed with a pill called spironolactone, and all my numbers went back to normal, and I've been taking that my whole life.
Oh, okay.
It's one of those drugs that's been around forever. But the weight gain didn't stop. And so finally my GP was like, you need to go see an endocrinologist. It took me a couple to find a good one. That's its own story. Mm-hmm. But when I finally did, my diagnosis was basically metabolic disorder, possibly with PCOS, which is short for polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Okay.
Polycystic ovarian syndrome and metabolic disorder is something that definitely plagues modern women. There's a lot of reasons for that, but when you have a metabolic disorder, it means you do not metabolize food correctly. So what it usually means, which was true for me, is that it's really easy to gain weight. It's really hard to lose weight. Mm-hmm. And that's what had happened because I basically had gained 100 pounds over like a 2-year period. I always had to watch what I eat or I would gain weight, but it wasn't, this was like, no matter what I did, I would just keep gaining weight.
Right.
And so it was really helpless and frustrating thing, especially after sort of having struggled with keeping my weight correct, quote unquote, which we'll talk about, over time and trying to stay somewhat smaller, knowing I would never be a small person.
And so was that diagnosis, that first diagnosis when you went on the pill, accurate?
It was. I did have an adrenal gland problem.
Okay, and is that connected to the other two things?
Possibly.
Okay.
So as my endocrinologist said, you kind of, we'll just call it Maureen syndrome because you've got some of the stuff you get in polycystic ovarian syndrome, which also can sometimes be like too much testosterone in the bloodstream for someone who's born a woman. It can also, there's a bunch of other things that happen. You end up with like high blood pressure, you end up with high cholesterol, that kind of thing. You can also end up with cysts, which is where the polycystic ovarian syndrome comes from.
Okay.
Now, I had been on birth control since I was 19 because my periods were so painful and awful. And so it is likely that staved this off a little bit.
Oh, okay.
At least the cyst part. My mother had a hysterectomy for ovarian cysts. So it is entirely possible that that was the path I was on, but that being on hormones my whole life has basically controlled all of that.
Right.
And I avoided like the cysts and the endometriosis and all that mess that so many women end up with.
Right.
So it was a relief to get the diagnosis, but that also meant basically better living through chemistry since my late 20s when I met Dr. Bohannon.
Since her late 20s, she was on something for high blood pressure, and she never had high cholesterol. But since she had a triglyceride problem, went on a statin and metformin.
Metformin is an old drug. It is used for folks that have type 2 diabetes. It is a very protective drug, protective of the pancreas. Interesting lately, people who want to try and live forever have started to take metformin because it is an anti-inflammatory. As we know, inflammation is the cause of all disease, just about all disease in humans.
Right.
And so it turns out it's not just protective of the pancreas, it's protective of all the organs because it keeps inflammation levels down.
Interesting. Okay.
So when she started me on that in my late 20s, I lost 50 of the 100 pounds almost immediately. And then I stopped. And then it became mostly you need to exercise and eat right, not to gain weight.
Aside from her freshman year of college, Maureen didn't struggle with eating problems or exercise. She made good choices that she felt were good for her and per the prevailing wisdom. Though, of course, those directions change and continue changing and are often harmful. But here's what she's done and learned.
I should say I'm a vegetarian. I actually grew up with a dietitian. I know approximately the right way to eat from that, though that might be its own podcast because what is the correct way to eat, we're finding is different for everybody.
Absolutely.
And how much.
Yeah.
I have been on a journey of trying to make sure I eat good foods. Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma was a huge book for me. Really, I'd already sort of started down this path of understanding how bad the American diet was when I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
But reading that book made me realize how important it was to actually buy whole foods from farmers, grow your own stuff, avoid processed food and ultra processed food and all of that stuff. So I'm far from a saint. I love a drink. I love a chocolate cake, but I probably eat better than I ever would have if I hadn't read that book.
Sure.
And my doctors are happy with the way I eat.
Right.
And I know how to count calories if I need to. But all it would take would be like that one extra cookie or that one extra meal, and I would gain a couple pounds and then I'd have to work really hard to take it back off. And it's not a way to live. It's not a way to live. It's not. The exercise did more than the dieting, so I just made sure I walk a lot. I saw a trainer for years to build muscle.
It took vigilance, but things were good for over a decade. And then out of the blue, she started gaining again.
I started gaining weight again in 2016, 2017. And we tried a different drug that made me feel horrible that I inject every day. And it was like the first generation of these new injectables.
Oh, yikes. Okay.
And I lost about 20 pounds and then I couldn't handle it anymore. And then in 2017, I stopped taking it.
That injectable made her feel terrible. So she dropped some weight and then went off it. And then COVID hit. Then she maintained pretty well. Yes, she had a little stress eating, as most of us did, but she was also walking a lot because there wasn't much else to do. All was well until 2022 when her numbers started changing. And I'm not just talking about the scale.
2022, I started packing on weight again. And nothing had changed except my age, which of course I'm 52, almost 53. And so there's a lot of hormonal changes happening.
Right. Which are probably even like more pronounced with your other issues.
Yeah. And so my doctor, Dr. Bohannon, who I love, was like, well, there's a lot of new stuff out there for you to try. So let's try it. And if you don't like it, then we can stop. But we need to do something because basically my numbers, which had been good, and she wasn't doing it by weight, it was by numbers. Mm-hmm. And my numbers were good. And there's a thing called A1C, which is the level of your sugars in your blood. And your A1C needs to be under a certain amount or you're considered pre-diabetic and then diabetic. And that's what type 2 diabetes is. And I had stayed under or right on the threshold of pre-diabetes from 29 to 50 and was keeping under control. And suddenly that number was rising too. So something was going on. I needed to lose weight. And so she put me on an injectable and I have lost 55 pounds.
Yeah.
So I'm back down to the weight. I back down to the weight where all of this started in my 20s.
When she started you on that, like, this was before the whole world knew about this kind of drug, right? Or had you heard of it?
I had not heard of it. Dr. Bohannon is a cutting edge endocrinologist. I mean, she has been at the forefront of treating people with diabetes and anything along that spectrum, type 1, type 2, thyroid, metabolic disorder for a long time. And she loves it. She cares deeply about it. She's passionate about it. And so she's always on the cutting edge. She's writing papers and she's like, we don't know much about it. Are you game? I'm like, sure, because I need to do something. I was really mentally scared, but I was also like, I need help because I was really frustrated that after working so hard for so many years that suddenly things were not going in the right direction. And when you can't lose weight, even though you're doing everything correctly in terms of physics, right? Because it's a physics thing. Amount of calories in, amount of calories expended should equal a reduction in weight.
Right. Which it doesn't for many people.
No. So, and when you have a diagnosis of metabolic disorder, that is totally going to be the case.
Yeah.
Some people, it might be the other way around where they metabolize food too fast. Mm-hmm. I don't think the American diet really allows that to happen, though. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I was chatting with my doctor about something unrelated to weight, and she gave me an explanation. And then I replied, okay, so it's normal. And she said, no, it's common. That doesn't mean normal. This is a hard pill for me to swallow at the Abby Normal podcast where you're weird and that's normal. What Maureen has gone through is common. Many, many women especially have had this journey. Up, down, try things, give it all you've got, constant attention to this, quote, weight issue. And then you eat one fucking cookie and gain weight. Eating one cookie and gaining weight is not normal, meaning not the normal operating system of a human body. Even if you want to be on this calories in, calories out balance sheet from hell, one cookie does not and should not equal 2 more pounds. Okay, getting back to how it went with this new injectable, Mounjaro.
I hate these names. They're so silly. It sounds like a medicalized version of mangiare, which is the verb to eat in Italian.
That's terrible.
It's terrible. And so the other difference is that it had changed from being a daily injectable to a weekly injectable. And so I was like, okay, if I only feel kind of crappy for one day instead of every day out of every week,
you could do it.
I can do it. I can do it for a while. The side effects were a lot less bad than the first time around, though I still it hurts to inject it. You
Really?
have to inject it. Yeah. And I learned that it hurts because it's a slow release.
Okay.
And slow release injectables are acidic and your body is slightly alkaline. So the sting is actually the difference between acid and alkaline going into your system.
Oh.
So I would numb up my leg and then
Stab it.
But
Okay.
then once it wasn't the actual stabbing that hurt. I mean, I'm heavily tattooed. Needles don't scare me. It was actually the medicine going in. The other thing is I would get immediately a sort of malaise come upon me. And I learned very quickly that I would do this after dinner on like a Monday night. And I would just have like a TV program or something to watch and some water because I basically would be on the couch the rest of the night. It like took my night out. But then
was it like nauseous or fatigue?
It was a fatigue, sometimes an insta headache,
Okay.
a taste in the back of my mouth that wasn't quite nausea. And it was just like this overall like, ugh, I need to lay down.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Generally, the next morning, it was fine. Sometimes I had a hard time sleeping. I think I was kind of overall uncomfortable. But then after 2 weeks of this, the weight started falling off.
So my mom they told her that for her to lose weight, she should eat under 600 calories.
That's very little. She will lose weight,
Well, of
but
course.
then she'll stop.
That's like starvation style.
Right, but that's not gonna do it. So here's the thing about these drugs. You might only be eating 600 or 800 calories a day,
Really?
but you feel sated because it basically makes you feel full when you're not. And you don't.
How
but then,
can you have enough like energy with 600 calories?
I mean, it might be more than 600. I don't know. All I know is I would basically eat half of anything that was put in front of me.
Wow.
So these drugs help you feel satisfied. And that they think is actually, in addition to making you feel full, the fact that you feel satisfied is the game changer. I wasn't supposed to lose weight at the dose I was on. I actually, all of these injectables start very small and you're supposed to ramp up. I have never gotten past 2.5 milligrams a week. Most people who are losing weight are on 15 or 20 milligrams a week. So we just kept it on this low dose.
Weird.
And in a year and a half, I lost 55 pounds. I didn't change anything else.
What?
I didn't change what I was eating. I didn't change how I was exercising. So all of my decent habits just basically it got rid of my metabolic disorder.
Right.
This particular drug. Ozempic is the other injectable that everybody's heard about. It just makes you less hungry by changing one little molecule in you.
Okay.
The Mounjaro does two things. It makes you less hungry, but it also helps address the blood sugar issues. So that's why she put me on that particular one. And it's specifically designed for folks with type 2.
Being 55 pounds smaller means that people started noticing, and those people had feelings. And Maureen also had feelings about her new appearance.
So that is the better living through chemistry part of the story.
I liked that story. That was fun. I mean, I remember we must have gone out for Stephanie's birthday. So anyways, it must have been a year ago, and I almost didn't recognize you.
Yeah.
That's how fast
It came off fast.
it happened.
Yeah. It came off really fast.
Yeah.
And it was weird. Having struggled with weight my whole life, having been told it's not my fault, pretty hard to believe it's not your fault. The society we live in has a lot of opinions about how people should look.
All the opinions.
All the opinions and all that shit is internalized. And as a woman, it is internalized in a different way. There is definitely, patriarchal internalization of what the standard of beauty is.
Mm-hmm.
Even in a place like the Bay Area that, really embraces everybody letting their freak flag fly and being whoever you want to be and being whatever size you want to be. It's still not really okay on a lot of levels for people.
Sure.
So I still am working through some of these emotions because I basically took a magic injection. But it's not magic, right? It's science. It solved my metabolic disorder. And actually, I should be feeling really proud because the fact that it fell off that quickly means that everything else I was doing was actually living healthily. right?
Yeah.
And
But I mean, even that makes it feel like you have to say that.
yeah, I
Right?
do.
Like
I have
it's
to
like
explain.
We have to prove to people we're doing the right things. We're doing all the things that you told us to do. Like, yeah.
And it's frustrating that we even feel like we have to. But here's the thing about food in this country and body and beauty standards. We eat like crap.
This is not a judgment of us. Maureen has a lot to share about our food supply, aka the crap that we eat. But I'm actually going to save that for the next episode so we can continue to focus on what she experienced after she was in a smaller body, including this treat.
I bought a bunch of new clothes.
You went shopping.
I went shopping. I can actually go to like thrift stores and garage sales and stuff and find
Right.
stuff that fits me.
Amazing.
I don't have to be in the plus size section anymore, which is mentally freeing, even though I know it shouldn't. Like I'm still grappling with all this stuff too.
Yeah.
As well.
Well, yeah, to be a size that you haven't been since you were 29, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, I went from
weird.
basically a size 18, 20 to a 12. I'm either an extra large or a large. So, but that it's nice. It's nice to be in
It
that
is.
range.
to not wonder if a store is going to have your size.
Yeah.
It's freeing. You
It's
know?
very
Yeah,
freeing.
Yeah. Shopping has been fun. And she has feelings bubbling up that she's evaluating. Not just about shopping, but also the weird opinions and words people freely share when they see her.
The thing that, and I've shared this, I think this is what got us started on this conversation. The thing that's been so interesting is now people's reaction to me when they see me. You know, my friends and some of my family, not all of them, know what I've been going through and know this has been quite a journey and know that this has been a struggle for a long time and a process. But then I run into people in my community, and some of them I had not seen since before COVID. You know, there was that rupture
Right.
of time and seeing people. But then a bunch of people I definitely had not seen since I had started the injection. And even my mother-in-law, who did know what was going on, they all say the same thing. They go, "Whoa, skinny Minnie."
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, what is that? And then you look great.
Uh-huh.
And what did you do? Wow. And it's very positive. Nobody would say a fucking thing to me if I walked in the room and had done what I did before I started this current medication. Wow, you've gained a lot of weight. Who would ever say that to you?
You look great.
You look great. They would never say that. But instead, all of this ingrained stuff comes out.
Yep.
And I actually snapped at my mother-in-law. And we get along great, but I was like, "Why did you call me that?" And she's like, "I don't know." And I'm like, I said, that phrase, skinny Minnie, has been setting me off, and I've been trying to examine why. And really, it comes down to the fact is, yeah, okay, yes, I lost weight. It's positive. My numbers are good. It's positive. All these things are positive. But I don't need to be told that I'm beautiful because I'm skinny.
Yeah.
Far from it.
Yeah.
And so why is that important that people need to say something?
Yeah.
And why would they never say something to me over the years when I know that I've packed it on because I'm having a hard time maintaining the weight because of my metabolic disorder?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I have an answer, but man, I hate the phrase skinny Minnie.
Yeah. Did sometimes that feel good that people noticed and said, wow? Or basically, did it always just rub you the wrong way?
It felt good for a second.
Yeah, like
And
the
then-
very first one, maybe.
Yeah. But then it was also just like, why does that feel good? Because the feminist in me is like, fuck you. Why does that feel good, Maureen? And why does that person have to say that? We need to change this.
Right.
This is, of course, a lot of these folks were like more like tertiary folks that are not part of my core group that I hadn't seen, and I would see, they'd be like, well, wow, what? Because it is a big difference.
It
So
is. Yes.
you're forgiven for noticing.
Yes. You looked like a different person.
But then, you know, folks that I knew enough would mostly be like, well, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know, they really wanted to know what I did versus just this like, atta girl, you lost the weight. Now you're good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So.
I I mean, again, we've just been so trained. Like, I just think of the number of before and after photos that we're exposed to, like, by the time we're 12. Hundreds, right? Hundreds.
Yeah.
And the whole point of the photo is gross before, yay, skinny afterwards, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure I have done what you are describing that people did to you, to other people, if not to you, but because it's just so instinctual.
It's so instinctual because
Yeah.
that is what we're trained to notice
Yeah.
instead of just noticing a person's presence or a way of being.
Yeah.
And
Right.
how are you? You seem great.
You seem great.
Yeah.
You seem great.
Yeah.
The thing that did it for me was I realized that, for example, if you have cancer and you are going through chemo, you also lose weight.
You do.
So commenting on that and telling someone looks great is actually really inappropriate and unkind. So, like, if you don't know that they want you to comment on it, shut your mouth. You don't need to comment.
So why is weight public, right? That's the question.
Right.
Why is weight public?
Yeah.
Because that reminds me, my mother-in-law's very good friend, Sue, had cancer. And one of the jokes she made when she was, because she ended up losing a ton of weight. And, you know, she didn't beat the cancer. She ended up passing away from it. But she had made this joke, which we kind of chuckled about. I knew her too, where she's like, well, I'm finally at the weight I want to be, you know. And for a moment, you couldn't, other than the turban, you couldn't tell she was sick.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So you don't know what's going on with people.
No. So you don't need to comment.
You
really
don't need to comment, but people do need to comment because of all the things we've just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, how do we make it better? What do I say to people when I still haven't figured out what to say to people? I'll just be like, yeah, I've lost a lot of weight and I feel I've just try and keep it like just the facts, ma'am.
Yeah.
But also just like, you know, I feel a lot better and try and keep it about how I'm doing health-wise versus.
Yeah. How do we fix it is a good question, which I'm glad I'm watching this Oprah thing because I think they're actually trying. But I had a friend that called me on it. This was many years ago. And I think I was talking about like, oh, I've, you know, gained weight or, oh, I feel so fat. It was something about myself and my body.
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't want to have a conversation like that with you anymore. We are not talking about our bodies like that anymore. And initially I was like kind of butthurt about it. I'm like, it's my feelings. It's my body. I should be able to talk, you know, about this.
Yeah.
But as time went on and I processed it more, like, I do think we need to be calling each other out on that shit. Like,
yeah. So was she calling you out because she did not think it was something that you should be upset about? Did she just think it was a negative way to?
Yes, she didn't want us to talk about our bodies like that.
In a negative way.
In a negative way.
Got it.
Yeah. She didn't want to talk about her body. She didn't want me to talk about my body like that. She didn't want us talking about each other's. I mean, I can't tell you the hundreds of conversations I have had with friends over the years. That's like, I'm feeling fat. I'm feeling fat too. Like, we should start working out. Like that whole conversation.
Right.
And she didn't want to play that game anymore. And it's like, I think that to stop the whole cycle, we need to start saying things like that.
I think you're right.
I'm sure there's like a kind, you know, way to go about it, but
I don't know if we have the language.
We don't have the
This
language.
is one of the reasons I was like, why are people complimenting me on my weight loss making me so angry?
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to do an artist book or zine about this. I still haven't fully articulated how to reply. So this conversation is helping, but yeah, it's
yeah, right. Could it just be like, yeah, there's got to be like a thank you for the compliment and
right,
like
exactly.
What is
What's the and?
Yeah, the little piece of like information about this actually hurts me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think inherent in the compliment is always at least the implication that I was disgusting beforehand.
Exactly. What does that mean I was before?
Correct. And that you noticed I was disgusting.
Right.
And now I am more appealing to your eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which doesn't feel good.
Which doesn't feel good. And, you know, I think about all the things that I said growing up about like, and these are all the things that we were told, like, you're Rubenesque. You're, in certain periods, you would have been the perfect body type.
She has such a pretty face.
Oh, yeah. Love that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Such a pretty face. But, like, there's a lesson here, right? Like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But never before has it been so supported by capitalism and the need for profit.
Yeah.
And so how do I say that? Thank you for noticing. Please don't let your internalized patriarchy and capitalist training inform this compliment. Okay, how do we make that into something nice? Because
that was not an elevator pitch. We got to boil that down.
Exactly. I'm like, please see my TED Talk.
Yeah, right? There you go.
Please see the podcast.
You could just have a little QR code. You can just scan for more information.
Yeah, here's Abby Normal's podcast. This is just the beginning of the conversation. Yeah.
Maureen was on Mounjaro for 1.5 years, but it's not cheap and therefore not sustainable.
It's also very expensive. I got a coupon for about the first 3 or 4 months. After that, the full amount kicked in, which is about $1,200 for 4 weeks.
Oh, what?
It's crazy. And they would not cover it because I am not diabetic. She gave it to me so I would not become diabetic, so I would lose the weight. And so it is untenable long term currently to continue taking it because who can afford basically $20,000 a year for a drug?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Also, it is so frustrating that they're like, oh, FYI, you're pre-diabetic, which means you're for sure going to get diabetes if you don't make big changes in your life. And then you have a drug that basically fixes that.
Right.
But they're not going to pay for that.
They're not going to pay for that.
So they're just going to wait.
Yeah.
Till you have diabetes.
Yeah. And we appealed it about 5 times.
Oh, that is frustrating.
So I took it until about 2 months ago.
Okay.
I told my doctor that I needed to stop for a while because it had started to actually make me feel, I had tapered off from once a week to twice a month. And I was doing fine, like wasn't gaining weight. And then I was like, okay, 3 weeks, wasn't gaining weight. Every 4 weeks, still wasn't gaining weight. But I kept, like every time I took it, I felt worse. And the last few times I took the shot, I just felt terrible. And so I have stopped. And I'm going to see if I can, because according to my labs, I no longer have a metabolic disorder. So now I am trying to live without the injectable, though I know the numbers aren't in my favor. Most people who stop this injectable will gain it all back.
Right.
I'm really hoping I can figure this out. So far, so good. I gained about 5 pounds back, and then I stopped gaining. And I feel like in the last 4 weeks, I haven't gained a pound, and I feel like I have a pretty good handle on what I can eat every day and the amount of exercise I need to do. So I'm going to do this through the summer and see where we're at.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's feeling good, in control, hoping for the best. She's had some time to reflect on how she felt before and how she feels now.
Especially since stopping this injectable and doing okay, I've actually forgiven myself a little bit. There was a lot of me beating myself up about never being good enough, even though I knew there was a medical reason behind my weight gain and inability to lose weight.
What do you mean about being good enough? Like being a good girl, like sticking with what you need to do, the correct and right.
This this puritanical patriarchal expectation that I would like count every calorie and not enjoy life. That is just not how I live, and I shouldn't have to live that way. But when I would gain weight, I would feel like I had done something wrong.
Right.
What is really interesting is that now that I technically don't have the metabolic disorder anymore, I still, when I did gain those few pounds when I stopped taking this a couple months ago, I was having those feelings. Now that it's under control, and now I know how I feel every day, and I feel different. I feel differently than I did before I started taking the drug, and I was still on all those other medications. So it has actually allowed me to forgive myself a little bit because I now realize that my internal feeling is different than when I was on this other stuff. And then like it really was necessary to control how much I was eating and how I was metabolizing food. Now I'm like, I'm not having blood sugar crashes. I don't get hangry. I don't need to like go grab a bunch of food. And even with all those other drugs, I would still get that stuff. So it's made it a little easier for me to start to let it go.
Yeah, I mean, you've gained clarity about yourself, right? Like how you operate. You know more about yourself.
Absolutely. And it's not something that I minded talking about, but internally I was always a little sad. I don't know why I was sad, but I knew that I would never be normal, quote unquote normal. I'm doing air quotes here. And I don't know why that still mattered, but it did. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. I didn't want to get sick. I didn't want to, and I just really wanted to, and I love clothes. I just really wanted to go buy clothes and look good. And, but I didn't always feel good. And I had a problem. It like, since that happened, my self-esteem took a big hit, and it was really hard to work back to a place where that self-esteem was back. And it was before I started the weight loss most of the time.
Like when you were gaining, you felt like...
When I was gaining, I felt like shit again.
Yeah.
Even though I knew it wasn't my fault. And that stuff is really hard to grapple with. I had a moment when we were all at the house in Altadena up in the hills. I hadn't worn a bathing suit in public for a long time. I was, even though you were all people I knew didn't give a fuck. It was really hard for me to put that bathing suit on and come out. It is really nice not to have to feel that badly about myself anymore. And that's the forgiveness. No, I don't really totally care anymore. Like, I'm like pretty excited that we're going to go to the pool in Vegas.
And you got your cute new vintage swimsuit.
But 55 pounds ago, I don't know if I could have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I remember about sitting in the hot tub is we have a male friend, and I don't know why I asked him this, because this is a stupid ass question to ask, but I think I asked him something like, what kind of girl are you into?
You did. I remember this
and
conversation.
This mother said something like, someone who's fit.
Yeah.
Which, that is a thing many dudes out there would say, and I think he's a lovely person.
Yeah.
But I'm just filled with rage at that kind of answer. Like, fuck you. What does fit even mean?
Right.
You mean fucking skinny.
Skinny.
With probably big boobs.
Probably.
That's what you actually mean.
Yeah.
Because there's people in this hot tub right now who are hella fit, and this is not the body type that you're talking about. So shut up.
Exactly.
I didn't say any of that, but...
No, I did an inward eye roll. And I also love him. But yeah, it's like... Yeah.
But those are the kind of back to kind of what you were talking about as far as your attitude towards yourself.
Right.
Those are the attitudes that are ingrained in us.
Internalized.
Not just him, women too.
All of us.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say. He learned that was the correct answer.
Sure.
It might, he's in his 40s. That actually might be what floats his boat now. But where did that come from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this idea that somehow thin equals fit, equals attractive, equals equals taking care of yourself, blah,
exactly.
blah, blah.
Yeah, right. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, we have a lot to unpack around what bodies are okay and what specific body types mean about the person. Maureen is working through that for herself. And in the meantime, she's excited about her new swimsuit, which of course she could have worn a couple years ago. But for whatever reason, she feels more comfortable in this summer.
Yeah, we referred to this bathing suit. I fulfilled a lifelong dream of finding a 1920s bathing suit made in the 2020s. It is so cute. And it's got little boy shorts and white and black stripes. And I'm going to look like a, 1920s girl with her bob and
so
full color instead of black and white.
You need a hat.
I need a big black.
Or just a bathing cap, actually.
Or
That's
bathing
what
cap.
would go with it.
Well, I should get the big black hat because the pale skin.
That's true. She not only wore that bathing suit in Las Vegas, she also went down a water slide, one surrounded by an aquarium, and she seemed more concerned about if the sharks were being treated humanely than how she looked while sliding.
Yes! Oh my God!
Join us for one more episode with Maureen next time.
The worst part about all of us, it's just because our food systems are so fucked up, and then our attitude towards food and how we should look are so fucked up.
Correct.
So that's why this is such a nightmare for everyone.
Right. Okay. Is that the thing you want to end on?
The nightmare? Oh, I don't know. This is also complicated. I'm filled with both positive and negative emotions about this.
Yeah, but you're in a good place.
I'm in a great place.
So I think we can end on that.
And I want to continue exploring what that feels like, because it's been the first time in a long time.
Right.
Maybe ever.
Yeah.
At 52 and a half, maybe ever.
Okay. That's good.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for being here on the Abby Normal podcast.
It was a pleasure to talk to you about this, mostly.
Mostly. Aside from the rage that is simmering just under the surface.